And a high number of people live within 500 meters of the street, and yet they have not been represented. I think there have been a couple of people who have occasionally come to meetings in the whole process of planning. This is a community where a lot of people live, and it's treated like a busy street that most people want to avoid. So I think if we put community central, which is much what May was saying, and if we get on with this process quickly, we can start to build a community. And none of us knows the future. So if we're looking at, 30 years, I just don't know what we can expect in 30 years. But if we're looking at the next 5 years, and we do everything we can to give people options to get out of their cars, and everything we can to make this a vital community, then I think we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any other speakers who wish to address council on this matter tonight? Welcome to our meeting.
My name is Alex Nagelback. I live at 961 Lavender Avenue. And if it's decided for this to go forward to public input, I'd like to see a hybrid option where the separated bike lane portions were twinned with the on-street portions where that's not possible, and then have the costs for that type of a hybrid option going forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further speakers? Calling for a second time. And calling for a third time. Thank you. This closes the public input component. I'm going to ask Mr. Scott to come back, and I'm going to try and capture those questions that were asked by our members, and then we'll turn it over to council for some reflection. So Mr. Scott, I don't want to put you on the spot having to remember all of those questions if you were scribbling madly like I was. So I'm going to refer first to Mr. Thiessen's questions, and there were three, although they were quite significant, but my first synthesis would be, where is the analysis data on bike traffic? Second question was and you may wish to call up the consultant to help with this, any data and analysis on greenhouse gases, and third, any analysis on the quality of life, for residents along the corridor. I will ask Mr. Schmuck's question afterwards.
So I guess I'll start on the first one in respect to bike traffic. I think in discussing with the Director of Engineering in terms of projecting future bike traffic, one of the things we're really looking to do is get some solid baseline information to assess that in terms of dependable methodologies that are out there to project the increase in ridership. There's not necessarily solid methodologies that we can use. I think we'll see an increase for sure in some of our recent projects. We'll be doing monitoring to see what those increases would be. So I'll start there, and I may turn over to the Director of Engineering to follow up on that. In terms of looking at quality of life and greenhouse gas as criteria and assessing the different options, that's certainly something that we can look at incorporating and moving forward. I think we've, in terms of the reduction of greenhouse gases, that's something that's been kind of implicit in some of the options, some of the objectives that we're trying to achieve, as well as quality of life. But being able to better identify what the benefits would be with each of the options in regards to that, and providing some clear distinction between the two options or other options that emerge is certainly something we can incorporate.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schmuck asked a question that's not directly related to this report, but his question was in regarding an opportunity to create a transportation corridor much like Lochside, and he referred to Saanich being able to potentially buy 2 houses and then we could create this. I acknowledge this is outside of the scope of the report, but would you be comfortable commenting or asking either planning or engineering or even our CAO, whoever would feel most confident answering this?
Yeah, so I think one of the major directions in the plan is to provide a variety of routes, and the idea is that Shelburne Street is a very desirable route for a lot of folks in terms of being a straight direct route. But there was also direction in the plan to create parallel routes, including the Buckler Creek Greenway, which are much more suited to all ages, abilities, and families. The Belker Creek Greenway in particular has been identified, and there's a number of property acquisitions that are required to create a continuous facility. The two properties that Mr. Smuck referenced are a couple of the ones that would require acquisition to complete the project, and they have been identified in the plan as a future acquisition and incorporated into our parks planning processes. So the intention is to do that in the longer term as opportunities become available and build that parallel route. But in terms of maybe a more aggressive approach in terms of acquisition, that's not something we've contemplated at this time.
Thank you. I see our Director of Engineering, Mr. Michelzi.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to add to what Cam was talking about there. In terms of option 1, when you're looking at that, actually it's shown in option 2 as well. The start of those parallel routes is what was suggested. You can see that in the Belker Creek Greenway, formalizing that more. As Cam talks about, there are properties that would be in the way of purchasing to continue that route. Option 1, though, does provide that workaround at Derby to get around on a cycle track that would be able to continue on the Greenway. In addition, on the other side of the street, that's what the addition of Kingsley, the Kingsley connector is there and showing, is that is also an off-street local connector parallel to Shelburne as an attractive alternative to people. And there could be long-term with the Kingsley connector, maybe a couple properties that would allow you to continue to go through as well.
Thank you very much. At this point, Council, we would now turn it over to Council for deliberations and or a decision. So I recognize Councillor German.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I thank staff for the report in front of us, which in many respects is quite comprehensive. One of the things that I didn't see really highlighted, though, in the report is the fact that walking and cycling for some 10 years now have been identified in the municipality as priority modes of transportation. And for modes of transportation that we're aiming to accomplish a modal shift to those modes and to make them more desirable. When you look at the graph on page 28 of the current condition of Shelburne, you might note that the current share of the right-of-way for cyclists is identified as 0%. That does not reflect a priority mode. And it is very unfortunate that that has been allowed to continue, as some speakers pointed out tonight, for 25 years, but we certainly don't want to allow it to continue for another 25 years, or even 10 or 15 years. Shelburne is very, very likely the most important non-serviced cycling corridor in the region. It is certainly so for all of the eastern side of Saanich. It is flat, relatively. It is straight. It is direct. There is no other route on that side of Saanich that even approximates those things. I cycle it fairly frequently because I have to get where I want to go. It's not my favorite cycling experience by any means. And every time I do, I wonder how we have left it so long as it is. I'm also familiar with the walking experience. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which I chair, has been doing a series of walkabouts where prior to our meeting, we meet and we walk a particular area. We've been around Uptown, we've been in the new Cook Street section, and about a month ago, we did a walk around on Shelburne, starting at the Shelburne-Mackenzie intersection and going all the way down to North Derry. So we're well aware of what it's like to walk on Shelburne, and it is not nice. The street is in many places aggressive and harsh and rather ugly in terms of there. The pedestrian, the best of the pedestrian infrastructure is barely acceptable, I think. When you get past Rowan going down towards Knight, it becomes really, really substandard. There is one small section, the little park in front of McDonald's, that shows what it could be, and indeed what it should be. And there you have a nice sidewalk separated the boulevard from the street. There's decent landscaping, and the feeling for the pedestrian is completely different when you're on that section as compared to sections before it. Nobody of the members who walked on that, most of the street, felt very comfortable when they were doing it. In spite of the fact that it is the natural cycling route on that side of Saanich, on our walkabout, which was during the middle of the day, which took 45 minutes to an hour, we saw a total of 4 cyclists. That's just not acceptable. It should be huge numbers of cyclists, but it just is somewhere where most cyclists don't want to go because they don't feel safe and they don't feel comfortable for a good reason. I suspect that there is, and we have seen in cycling recently, a huge amount of latent demand that when we put in new facilities, suddenly they are filled up with more people cycling. I've been a cyclist back before we had a Lochside and a Goose, and you had to cycle only on the streets. And you know, it really was for the people who were committed or needed to be committed, whatever. But it wasn't, you know, a very happy experience. But then suddenly we put in the Goose and then the Lochside. Wow, where did all these cyclists come from? They came because there was a facility where even families with their children could feel comfortable. I don't have a tool to measure it, but I suspect that kind of latent demand exists for Shelburne, hugely. When we have had, Biped ran a cycling festival every year where they would close off a lane on Shelburne and get people to come out, and they had huge turnouts of people who, often families, who wanted to show that they were interested in cycling and cycling on Shelburne if it was possible. So, you know, we won't know that until we make a change, but I really strongly suspicious or believe that we have that kind of demand there. We just haven't served it yet. We do need to look at factors like quality of life and quality of place on Shelburne when we're planning. And the street is a huge part of that. We do need to look at how does this fit into our OCP that talks about aspects of general sustainability? And in particular, of course, how does it fit into climate change mitigation? Everything we do right now should be aimed at infrastructure that in the long term reduces GHG production in this municipality, in this region. That's the biggest single problem that mankind faces today, with huge consequences. Well, if we're looking at something that's going to change and reduce that, we need to give it priority. When we get the stats about traffic being slowed down and traffic being diverted, those stats, and I don't know if they were intended by the authors, but they really serve to point out the problem with how we are conceiving Shelburne. We are looking at it as a conduit for traffic. And good urban streets do much, much more than serve as a conduit for traffic. They create an environment where they create an environment suitable for multiple modes, they create a comfortable place for pedestrians, and they add value to the lands on either side of them. When you don't do that, when you create a street like Blanchard, for example, as it goes past the malls, you get nothing but a conduit for vehicle traffic. That's all Blanchard is. And take a look at it and consider how much has changed on that street in the last 35 years in terms of redevelopment. Very, very little, because you have destroyed the property values. The value in adjacent lands isn't there because of the ugly and unattractive form of the street. You will not see, in my expectation, the kind of development we would all love to see in Shelburne, the ability to turn it into a place that is a people place that has a sense of place about it, that is a community, until you do something about that street. The biggest obstacle to redevelopment now is the nature of the street, plain and simple. So when you were saying we are not going to change, or we're going to wait to change the street to get money from redevelopment, rots a wreck. Because you have a street that is antithetical to that. So we need to move to start to change that street for pedestrians, for the community, and for cyclists. And I think we should be considering how we get about the long-term reduction of using that street as a conduit. Hey, maybe some of the people who find it a little slower to move down that street might consider taking the bus or might consider cycling. We should be looking at long-term reduction of certain types of vehicle trips. And those are the ones where somebody, as a single occupancy driver in their car, takes their car downtown Victoria or elsewhere to sit in a parking lot for 8 hours to drive it home during the peak periods in each case. That is undesirable behavior, and we should be, as one gentleman said, looking at traffic demand management, or TDM, to help to deal with that. So when I look at something that suggests, well, we're going to try to accommodate the same number of vehicles in 2038, I just can't agree with that policy. It's not productive. But where we are now, if we do separate the short-term mobility from the major plan, that may be all right, but please, let's make sure we set a timeline for getting that mobility section considered. I don't want whoever sits at this council to 2020 being wondering when that mobility report's coming forward. Let's set a timeline that if we are going to take it out to the public, that we will have it back in a report no later than late spring of next year, at the latest. Because we can't afford to, as Darrell Wick said, it's only been 25 years now. We can't sit around and wait for another long and arduous process. If council wants to send option 1 and option 2, that's up to them. I don't think I heard a speaker tonight who spoke in favor of option 1, including quite a few members of the current advisory group. Virtually everybody who spoke about the options spoke in favor of option 2. If council wishes to send option 2 only, I would certainly support that. And finally, I would hope that there will be, we have a group in Saanich called the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee that I happen to chair. They are there because they have expertise in those two things. And I hope they will be made a very integral part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dermott. Councillor Workman?
Thank you very much. I've been involved in council for the past 18, 19 years, and I have to say, over the years, Saanich has become more aware of the importance of cycling and pedestrian networks. We're not going nowhere. We are moving ahead. But the biggest problem, if we could start all over again, bulldoze everything over, start over, and redo our streets, redo our sidewalks, it would look a whole lot different than it does today. Because of the way they are built, and they were built for cars, to make the changes, it doesn't come cheap. And that's reality. But in saying that, I think it is important, as we move ahead, to have a plan on what we want to do. I believe everyone in this room, council and all of you, want to see the ultimate transportation, pedestrian, transit corridor on Shelburne. I guess when I looked at the 30-year plan, some have said we're not going to wait, we don't want to wait 30 years. And I, for one, I believe council is not saying we're going to wait for 30 years, but it will happen over a 30-year period. I'd like to ask a question of staff, and it's a little thing called money and budgets. And it's easy for me to sit here tonight and say, yes, we've got to move ahead, we've got to do it in the next 5 years. We've got to get it done, it's important, we want it. Then I read the engineer's report. Some of the current priorities, the next 5 years that would need to be considered for deferment include Glanford Avenue, complete streets, St. Clair Road, complete streets, completion of Douglas Street Connector, bike route, Gorge Road, bike lanes, Bridgebank Road, Van Allen Avenue reconstruction, 10 kilometers of new sidewalk, and approximately 80 new sidewalk curb and ramps, and the list goes on. And I guess what I'm saying to us, what we have here tonight, we would all like. But tomorrow and the next day, we have different demands on us, and we have to look and balance it. But I would like to ask the question of staff. We're talking about a lot of money here. And we're looking at our residents who are saying we want it now. And my question is, if we vote for option 2 or option 1, what determines the time frame? I can't believe it's going to be determined here tonight.
Through the chair to Councillor Wergeland, I think what's being suggested in the report is to go to public consultation on option 1 and 2. I think doing that is going to provide us a lot more feedback on both options and refinement and good feedback that we can take into consideration. I think it also then will speak to getting towards a final design, a detailed design, firming up what the estimate might be. Something that we would look to in the budget for. Today, these numbers are preliminary. They're high level for decision-making purposes, but we don't have the detailed design and estimate yet. So once that's done, then we can look at what is our capital plan for the number of years, potentially save for it to build up a fund towards a project like this.
Thank you. And the only reason I asked, I didn't want to give the residents who are here tonight, no matter how the vote goes, that we're going to put the shovel in the ground tomorrow, so to speak, and be finished in 5 years. And we do look at our priorities on it. I'd just like to make a general comment that probably hasn't been talked about much. In my past life, 2 years back, as a residential builder, and when this whole Shelburne corridor came up, the question I asked 2-3 times over the first year, everything we need as far as the transportation on the corridor will be dependent on development. And after a year, we looked at both of them, and we could look at our transportation corridor and say we need more space. And the only way we're going to get more room on the street is through development. I guess a concern I've had over the last couple of years has been the conspicuous silence of well-meaning people, our residents, and our cycling people who have been passionate about cycling. And I wished they would have, some of them shared more of their passion and realized too the importance of also having development along Shelburne, because they do complement each other. And on that point, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. I have next up Mayor Atwell and Councillor Haynes, but I would just remind Council, and now Councillor Murdoch, but I would remind Council that we do not have a motion in front of us, and we perhaps may wish to have a motion to guide our discussion. Mayor Atwell.
I don't have a motion as such yet because I'm starting to go around the table. Maybe we need to go around the table some more before we do that. But my question was for staff on the cost. And I'm mindful to the comments that I've just heard about the cost. And we come down this, there's the history here that we've had so many years of inaction, if you will, on this corridor. It's popular. We've heard that it's a community that really is the desire to be built in this area and has many aspects to it. Well, I look at the cost as being quite a lot. I also think about the council meeting that we just recently went through, where $8 million went out the door, and we've raised the money through essentially a loan, and we have access to Municipal Finance Authority money. So my question for staff is this a lot of money? Isn't this something that we would simply amortize over the 30, 40 years of benefit that we'll be providing for the community. I know we're starting with mobility, but ultimately, these kinds of changes are sweeping, they're long-lasting, and they should be paid for over time by the residents that will come and live in these houses next to and travel on the corner. It doesn't seem like a lot of money in that regard when it's funded that way.
Thank you, through the chair to the mayor. Borrowing is one of the components of our capital plan, and it's factored in when we adopt the capital plan. There is a borrowing portion that allows us to meet the sustainability targets. So borrowing is absolutely one of the options for this project, but as I think was indicated in the report, there are other significant projects that are identified for borrowing as well. So it is about prioritization, so absolutely it is an option.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Haynes, then Councillor Murdoch.
So, thank you very much through the chair. I'm going to avoid repeating many of the things that have been said. But on this here, we have around $9.9 million. And as Councillor Wilkins said, we have many other projects. And it's a case of community priorities. And one of the struggles I had dealing with the first review for me as a councillor of our budget and our strat plan is how do we decide on those priorities? Where do we decide to put these resources? So I look forward to the opportunities we go down the road where we can engage the community to say, where do you want your sidewalks? How many parks do you want? Where do you want your density? We heard today here from Judy Gaylord, she thought that maybe there could be increased density on the southern part of Shelburne. Maybe more density than's been suggested in the current official plan. So we do need to embrace the residents more in this process. And as we look today, we put some money into an IT development. And as we go forward as a community in Saanich, we hope to have the opportunity for residents to come online. There already is a little draft budget tool online where you can go online and give us some sense of your priorities. But that's the kind of decision making that's needed, because at the end of the day, this is your money. And the mayor's had an elegant suggestion of maybe we could borrow to do this. That is certainly something that Val has indicated is possible, but at the same time, there's all these other priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to take the step of making a motion to help frame the conversation. So I'm going to suggest that we vote to receive the report and give direction to staff to pursue option A.
Second. Okay, would you like to motivate on that, Councillor Murdoch?
I would love to motivate. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard a number of folks, in fact, most of the speakers compliment staff on the creativity of proposed option 2. I personally think option 2 looks like a terrific way for a number of gains, but I'm not going to say let's barrel forward. I think we do need to go through a process where we talk to folks about what that means, including funding implications. But I do think that it shows a terrific amount of creativity and I think gives us a path forward on what would have been otherwise a tremendous amount of effort and probably an extraordinary expense in order to achieve the 30-year vision in the Shelburne Valley. There is an awful lot of good stuff in that plan. I don't want to see us further delayed on implementation. But I do want to make sure that we've done an adequate job of giving an opportunity for feedback on what's proposed here and how that fits into the broader vision. So my thanks to staff, my thanks to the folks who joined us this evening, the members of the Shelburne Valley Action Planning team in order to give us what we have this evening. It's been a long time coming. There's quite a bit more ahead of us to do. But I have optimism that what we will now put in front of the board is a reasonable path forward with, I think, a considerable number of benefits.
I'll second the motion.
It's already been seconded by Councillor Haynes, and I will, because he was the second, I'll go Haynes, Sanders, German, Brownhoff, Rice.
Once again, I'll keep this brief. To the mover, Councillor Murdoch, could you give me some guidance on, having made that motion, which of the options, we have 4 different options, A, B, C, D, 4 different options over on that?
You mean the option A for process? My motion was for option A.
That was easy. Councillor Sanders.
Thank you. I support the motion for option A. I think it's a good way for us to go. People talk about 30 years. I was part of the committee on the first Shelburne local area plan, and I believe it's over 30 years. So I think it's certainly time that we move on this, and I think there's some good ideas, and maybe we needed to wait 30 years to get some great ideas. And the idea that the plan was that it was from North Dairy to Poplar, because that was a narrow spot. Well, it certainly has grown, and that's still a narrow spot. And somebody's doing a wonderful job of redoing their house, so if we don't move along this quickly, there will still be no road width. Anyway, I think this is a good way to move on. I appreciate the public that's come out and has been diligent to hang into this process for all these years, and that's dedicated to giving good ideas, and even have more ideas about social economic benefits, building the community, and it goes on and on. And so it's getting late, and I won't elaborate anymore, but I think this is a good way to go, a good response on we need to have some process, public engagement on this new proposal, and I certainly support it.
Thank you, Councillor Sanders. Councillor German, Brownlow, and Bryce, in that order, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will support option A for sure. It doesn't separate the two parts of the plan, but I think that's actually a good thing. I don't know whether or not there would be confusion in the public, but what it does do is it keeps the pressure on to get everything finished off and get it finished off reasonably quickly. And I think that's a good thing in doing that. I just want to make a comment in terms of the cost. And of course, $9 to $10 million is not a small amount of money. However, I would point out that we are spending in the range of, say, we've spent $5 million for a relatively short section of Cook Street to turn it into